and it's always usually better. It's always better that if you're doing listening, students write very little, no? Because it's not a reading exercise or a writing exercise, it's a listening. No? You only have to make sure that they understood the recording. So the answers are usually very short, and the topic, of course, is the same. No? Okay, well, by looking at this, no, these task characteristics, I'm sure that you can imagine the activity, no? O sea, cómo luciría esta actividad in paper, no? It's a typical activity that we use, a typical task that we use in assessments. Okay. And so if we go to the next page, no? Can we go to the next page? So remember, the third component here is the recording method. No? The recording method. So here you have a clear explanation of the recording method. No? Here you have to detail the aspects of ability. For example, here is its comprehension of the specific details in listening. You have the scoring method. You have to explain. You have usually you have a scale, a rating scale, or you have the scoring key below. The scoring key also that explains how it's going to be graded. So it's 1 point for each response according to the scoring key, 15 maximum. Teacher reads each student's answers, assigns the points according to the scoring key, adds this up to the total score. So obviously, if you have 1 point for each correct answer, you as a teacher, you read how many correct answers, okay, and you add them up to get the total score. No? Well, it's important, as you see here, whenever possible, that you the next day or when the time comes that you give the scores back to the students in the next lesson, and possibly you can give feedback or do the correction. That's always very, very useful. Right. Well, for example, here, well, there was no need of a rubric, because it was only listen. But in writing, usually you have a rating scale or rubric, which specifies how many points and for what specific aspects the students get the points. No, great. And then in the instructions, this has to be as clear as possible. No? So here, as you can read, it's a clear description of what students have to do. No, it says, while listening to the conversation, you will write the answers to the questions on the sheet provided. You have 10 minutes to do this, and then you have another 3 minutes to check and correct answers if necessary. And the score will be the number of points correct, for each 1 point for each correct answer. Right. And so that way, you see, with all these specifications and then the task characteristics, and then explaining the scoring, the recording method, and the instructions very clear. What students, I mean, have no doubts, and you can be sure that students are receiving a fair treatment. You make sure that this quiz is complying with the principles, of meaningfulness, fairness. For example, here, because you have already explained, the instructions are very clear, so everything is in place. Yeah. So, and also, of course, it's of great help for you, because next time you want to you want to make another test, you use the blueprint, and you change some things, you adapt it, or you exchange with other teachers, and so it's easy because you have here the original, the matrix here, no? That you can use for future assessments. Great. Okay, so I want to ask you guys, in your experience, no, if you see all this material, if you see it as useful material, no, that you can implement. I know that it's like a lot of work, on top of all the work that we already have as teachers, preparing classes, materials, and then class management, and then meetings, and then individual problems. It's a lot of things, and on top of that, you have to make sure that the assessments you create comply with those principles, no? Consistency, fairness, that they are practical, that they are valid, authentic. Well, it's a lot of things, but I ask you, honestly, if you find all this material that we have seen, especially templates and blueprints, do you find them useful? Do you think that it can help you implement better quizzes in your better assessments in your classes, please?
Yes, bro.
Yes, of course.
Of course, yes. And what benefits can you see from what you have
Well,
seen?
in my case, I can say that these templates and also this content that we have been learning can be taken as a guideline for us to make our assessments better and to assess our students in a better way. And also it provides us maybe a key on how to do our assessment and in which steps are on and which things we can take into account when we are taking a test or when we want to apply a task. Yes.
Task, an assessment task. Okay,
Yes,
great.
bro.
Thank you. I'm glad you see it that way. No, I'm glad you find it useful. No, useful. I know that there's it's a huge amount of information, but if you, I mean, if you have this sense of practicality, just take what you find interesting, that you find applicable, that is within your means to do it, that is within your time, no, and implement it. No, don't. I mean, it can't hurt to try something new. No. At the beginning, as many things in our profession, doing this at the beginning is time consuming. But once it's done, because it's a matrix, then what you have to do is only take this blueprint and start making some adjustments, for example, in the template and the task characteristics, and then you can exchange with other teachers, and the idea would be that ideally that you and the department in your school can share this information, that you develop the habit of getting together and discuss assessments, then create a bank, and then exchange point of view, exchange assessment tasks. I mean, the best results happen when you work as a group, as a department. For example, in my experience, I can tell you, when I first arrived there, every teacher was responsible of creating their own tests. And more than once, I found that some teachers had very good tests, that they really took the time to prepare. And although, well, these tests were good in what they were asking, and all the abilities that they were testing, but you found a lot of mistakes, in how they write and how they pose the activity, and how they the way that it was going to be. I mean, the weight for each question, and yeah. So and then you had this group of teachers that asked only one question. No? They said, well, in my exam, you're gonna write describe your mother, yeah, and that's your exam. No, describe your mother in 5 lines. Okay, and that's the quiz. No, that's the final exam. And so over the years, I've come to understand that the best work happens when you work cooperatively, with the people in the department, and you try and get consensus, and then you get together and you share ideas. Then when everybody shares, your work is less, no? I mean, all you have to do is take this and these ideas, edit something, you know, maybe give it your personal touch, check that the quiz is going to be valid, fair, meaningful, etc. You already know all those principles, and then it's ready. No, it's ready. Great. So I'm glad you see it that way, Andrea. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, anybody else? What benefits do you see? How do you think that this can help you in future preparation of assessments? No? Please, somebody.
Mm, yes, Prof. As
Yes.
as you said before, I think that if we can do all of these, um, how can I say, if we follow these steps in order to create or develop good assessments, is going to allow us to don't lose time,
Exactly. Yes.
because as you know, if we if we are creating a different assessment, because we as professor, we will not be in just one course, in just one grade.
Mhm.
We in some cases
Exactly.
have different students, different grades, courses. So we need to be clear what to do in each class or for each class. And
Yes.
these kind of steps are going to help us a lot with in this situation.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. That it's great that you mentioned that, because it's what we have in the next pages. No, the exactly, no, this concept of quality, no? Quality control is what we call it. It's on page 139. No, and you're right. No, once you have the blueprint, okay, the benefits are many. No, one big benefit is that, like you said, you don't work alone in school. No? At some point, you're going to have to get together with other teachers and create, for example, the final exam, or maybe the final exam for students who are graduating, for example. No? And so, if you have all this information in your files, no, if you have worked in different levels, okay, and you have assessment tasks, no, and you have the template. So if they ask you to elaborate an exam, no, so it's easy. You just go to your computer, you check what levels, what abilities you want to check. If you have everything in order, you can create an exam in, well, I don't know, maybe in 1-2 hours. No, but other teachers will have to spend hours or maybe days, no, looking for good items, good tasks, and imagine all the magnitude of creating an exam for graduating students, no? So, and that's just one example, no? And so, of course, and in general, one of the, how can I say, the virtues, I don't know, that teachers should have or develop, is that we have to learn to be organized, no? And work hard when we have to work hard, but then develop this sense of practicality, no? That you only administer because you know what works, what doesn't work, and so you just administer in the best way, and also always in the student's best interest, no? Of course. Great. So thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, and so so quickly, I would like to go back to this example here, page 138, because we have the reading part here. I think it's over here. We can go back one page. Abby, it's up here. I can see it.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah. The next activity is an assessment for reading, no? For reading. I'm sure that if you had time to read the example on page 138 and 39, it's an example of the FCE exam, no? Where students have where you get a text and 5 or 7, I don't remember, 7 phrases have been removed from the exam, no? Exactly here, no? They have been removed from the exam. No, sorry, it's page 136. Sorry. If we can go to that page, no? And so, but also the description of the task was on page 139, 38. That's why I got confused. And so it's the typical example of the FCE exam where you have a whole text, but 5 or 6 or 7 phrases have been removed, and then you have the same number plus one or two options, and then you have to match, no, the blank with the phrase, no, usando letras. It's a typical FCE exam, no, exam. And so now that we know the task, it's easy, no? We sit as students, we sit, read, and then we do the exercise. But to create this at the beginning is a lot of work, no? To elaborate this, no? And so all the work begins here when you have the reading task, no? Assessment task template here, no? So, for example, you tell the students now a week before that they will have an assessment of the reading ability next week. The purpose is to give each student a mark that will count as part of their grade for the school term. They would have to read a text and match the paragraphs with the headings, no? Well, with the headings in this case. Well, this one is with the headings, but I think the next one was with the blanks, no? And so on the day of the assessment, you explain the students the same, no? The day, where is that? I think on the day of the exam. But here, I think we skipped one page. I can't seem to find this. What page is this? Similar assessments. I want to make sure that we're on the same page. So can you show me page 137?
Yes, Prof. I am on.
That's 137. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, this is it. Yeah. And so, and then you have on the day of the assessment, then you have, they have to, well, explanation, no? Well, you have that. Then you have, because we don't have much time now, then you have the assessment task characteristics, now similar to the reading, to the listening, but now here you have the writing. Description of the task. Well, you know how this works, no? Now, if you can go to the next page, no? The recording method is the recording method, no? So aspect of ability is getting the major ideas in reading. The scoring method, the criteria, no? For each correct blank heading completion, you get 1 point, no? Score reporter, number of correct choices for heading, 6 maximum. The teacher reads each student's answers and assigns the points according to the scoring key, o sea, de la respuesta, no? The answer key. the teacher adds up to get a total score and enters this on the student's paper. The papers with the scores are given back the next to the students in the next lesson. So, well, here we can see that this assessment task is also very practical, no? Because when you correct, you only have 6 answers, 6 letters, so you can easily correct this section. So it's practical. So here you have here that if you can scroll down here, in this part of the test, there are 2 tasks. Well, only one was presented here because of to save some space. No? For each task, 6 paragraphs and a possible list of headings for them. Match the headings from the list with the paragraph they describe the best. Write a number of the heading in the space after the paragraph. There will be 2 headings that you don't need. Your score is the number of correct matches. No, you have 20 minutes. Blah 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 blah. Okay, well, and so it's a very practical activity. No, it helps us. It helps us establish that students can really understand main ideas. No, because by giving them the title or the heading for the paragraph, we make sure that the students understand what the main idea is. No, and so it's a very good activity and it's practical to correct. No? Great. So you see, we've seen 2 examples, and then what you have to do is just read these 2 pages. No? How can you use a blueprint to guide assessment development? And so here, quickly, what we see here is that when you work alone, it helps you to create. It helps you to create multiple assessment tasks. No, and if you are working alone, you keep record, and then you can create other assessment tasks, and then you get to understand what the real level of your students' ability is. No. Now, if you work an assessment developed by a group of teachers or by different teachers, no, and so this is when I told you that sometimes you're asked to elaborate an exam for maybe for different levels, or maybe for the end of term, the final exam, or maybe an entrance exam. And so you want to make sure that the tasks that you develop, will yield assessments that satisfy the need for meaningful and generalizable interpretations and consistent assessment records. Because when you've done all the process, you know that exams or quizzes have to comply with all these principles of generalizability, consistency, meaningfulness, and authenticity, etc. And so it's of great value to understand and to have worked with blueprints. And then it says similar assessments to be given at different times. Well, of course, well, if you can do it better this time with the blueprint, it's guaranteed that you're gonna do and you're gonna create similar good exams at different times. Right, but okay, of course, I'm just trying to summarize. I would expect you to read this and get a better understanding, and read it at your own pace. Okay, and then there's a little explanation about quality control, maintaining quality control, then comparing assessment tasks with instructional tasks. It's very important. And finally, you have on the next page, you have a good graphic that explains how the blueprint works. This is a very good figure, figure 10, which has this analysis and contrast of content and then instructional tasks. Yeah. And so what in your free time, please take a moment to analyze this graphic, not this figure. And then in the last part, I think it's very, very useful. What you have here is a summary. It's a very good summary. I read it in the 10 minutes, where the author explains the importance and the benefits of doing and developing the habit of creating the blueprint. As you can see in the last part, it says, in summary, a blueprint guides you as you develop assessments and also provides a way for you to monitor the quality of the assessment as you develop them. Using a blueprint to develop assessments helps you guarantee or make sure that, and then you have these 3 valuable points here, that the assessment tasks you include in the assessments adequately sample both the content to be assessed and the tasks in the TLU domain to assure that your interpretations will be meaningful and generalizable. Then the assessment would provide sufficient performance from your students to yield consistent assessment records. Because I insist, and the author insists, that if you want to get, how can I say, if you want to have a clear interpretation of the records of an assessment, you need to have several different tasks, and the more tasks you have, the more performance for your students, and the more consistent the assessment records will be. And then finally, this will help you make sure that different forms of assessment are equivalent in the content they assess and in the characteristics of the tasks they include. So that's basically the summary, of this chapter 10. So, well, I know that I have omitted some important information, but you have the free time, hopefully tomorrow, the weekend, to read more in detail about it. Blueprints, and maybe, if possible, look up more information, more reference. I'm sure that there are videos, there are some good examples online, other authors, maybe articles about blueprints. So I encourage you to read that. And if you find something interesting, to tell us in our class next week, for example. Great. So I don't know how much time we have, Abby?
We have 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes. Yeah, well, I hope it's enough. Well, maybe it's enough to explain about the presentation. Abby, if you can display any example that you can find, example 1 or 2, any of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is the idea. First, we're going to have 7 groups, no? Abby, is that right?
No, Prof. We have. No, yes, 7, right? Yeah.
7 groups. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to have 7 groups. Most groups will have 4 students. I think only 1 or 2 will have only 3 students, but I hope it's not a problem. No? Okay, great. So what you have to do is choose one of the examples that Abby has, I'm sure, has shared with you or showed you previously. No, so you can choose one. These are examples that we have in the last section of the book. Example assessment tasks. And so, if you want, you can choose, for example, group 1 can do task 1, or you can do it in order, or you can do it at random. No, that's up to you. Yeah, and if we can display what I want you to do this time, what you have to do this time is easy, it's simple, and it's preparation for what you're going to do next week. Because next week you're going to do the same, but with the real assessment that you have used in your classes. Okay, but that's next time. This time, you're going to use the templates, no, that we have here, no? The example of these assessment tasks. And so, for example, here we can see example number 9, no? Yeah, which was referred to in explaining the template. So I think it was chapter 8 or in chapter 9, this was referred to. Okay, and so what you have to do is explain, no, what example 9 presents, no? You can use some information from here, but please don't read, no, what you have there. What you have to do here is understand the concepts, optimize time, and only choose the information that is relevant. You can summarize this in your own slides, no? And present it in a different way. Now, of course, you have here this format, but in your presentation, use a different format, no? So explain how, what the task is, okay? Go through each section, for example, explain, no, that, for example, here it's in number 9, for example, it's an assignment, no, it's a task for intermediate level for students in high school. It's reading for major ideas, and the intended uses is summative decisions, no? So well, you have that on the first page there, yeah. And so if possible, no, if you think that you need to expand, no, an explanation, for example, here, number 9, you see only summative decisions. If you think it's important to mention what decisions you want to make, you go ahead, but it all depends on how much time you have, no? Because I would expect maybe 20 minutes tops for each group, no? And so then you explain the setting, no? The setting. And then you have claim 1, which is the intended consequences. Then claim 2, intended decisions. Claim 3, intended interpretations. So all this process that we did in chapters 5, 6, 7, I think. And explain, no, with the concepts. You can go back to the literature in these chapters and take the main principles there and explain, you know, what are intended interpretations, and in this particular example, in this item, what are those intended interpretations and why, you know? And why. So I want what I